Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today this car gets two very important parts of the suspension. In the last video we've done the drive shaft and we reused our coupling rods and our tie rod ends, but in this video we will get new ones in, and I got our coupling rod here. This is a stronger coupling rod from the brand Mito, and we have new tie rod ends from the brand Limförder. It doesn't really matter where you get those or from what brand you get those. I just feel like I trust these brands and that's why they're going in. Also, these Mito coupling rods are really well known to provide a very strong coupling rod for your car, and that's why I got those. First of all, why new coupling rods? Now, the coupling rods are a very important part of your suspension. In fact, they are the connection between the stabilizers and the dampers. So their task is to help reduce the car's tilt while cornering. Now, those two joints here, they can easily knock out, and that will cause clunking or cracking noises whenever you hit a curb or hit a bump. In this case, however, I decided to replace my coupling rods because I was going to lower the car anyway soon. And in the process of replacing the drive shaft, I had to get them out anyways. So I'm getting these stronger coupling rods in because when you lower the car with a lowered spring, your damper will be in a constant pressurized state, giving your joints on each end a very rough time. So stronger rods will possibly be less affected by that and could improve your car's handling as well. However, with our tie rod ends, that's a different situation. If your car steers to one side or another, even if your steering wheel is set straight, then probably your joint of the tie rod end is knocked out. In this case, it wasn't. It was perfectly fine, but in the process of removing your drive shaft, you will have to get the tie rod end out as well. On the other side of the car, I had to cut them off because they just simply wouldn't want to get out. And replacing it on just one side isn't a good idea, so I'm doing it to both sides. That's why we replaced the tie rod ends as well. Now, to get our old coupling rods out, you will not need too many tools for that. That's kind of easy actually. You will just need a 16mm nut, and inside of that screw, or the joints screw, there is a 5mm hex that you can hold against with a wrench or your normal hex tool, but I recommend using a wrench because it's a lot faster to loosen up that nut. You will see right now how I loosened that old coupling rod. It's really easy and it shouldn't take too long as long as you have the right tools for that. So just unscrew the nuts on both sides, the side of the stabilizer and the side of the damper. Now, getting your tie rod end out is quite a difficult situation in comparison. I have this nut sitting on the old tie rod end that I had to cut off, like I said, on the other side of the car. This happens to be a 17mm. Thing is, if you turn that nut and the whole screw in the end of the joint turns as well, there's actually no chance of getting it off without cutting it off, at least in my case, because there's nothing to hold against it with these original tie rod ends. With the new ones, I find that's kind of handy. You have this little thing here where you can hold against it as well. As a T30 Torx where you can hold against the screw as well. That will be making it a lot easier to get it out, and in this case getting it in. Now, another tool that I have just to make life a little bit easier is this thing from K&S Tools. There's a lot of brands. There's also Hatset or even some no-name brands. I got this tool from a no-name brand first. Broke in the first use, of course. This tool here is kind of handy to get these tie rod ends out, because once you've loosened the nut, it will make your life way easier in getting it out. I didn't have to use it here, but how it works, it just pushes your tie rod out like that. As soon as you turn that screw further down, it causes a lot of pressure. Don't have to use that. You can always use a rubber hammer and just give it a little knock and that's it. Depends on how rusty your tie rod end is. Now getting your tie rod off your tie rod end of the tie rod, you will need, in this case, a 22mm tool to loosen that nut right here. For that I will put it back into the knuckle and just give it a little turn using our rubber hammer. That's it. But don't overturn it, just loosen it a little bit, because you will need to remember that position of the screw nut back here. Our new tie rod ends come with new nuts as well, so we'll have to put these onto the exact same position. So once that nut is loose, we can go ahead and turn your tie rod end off. Thing is, you will have to remember how many turns you give this end, just to make it easier to remember how many turns you have to give the new tie rod end to have a almost exact alignment. You will probably, or almost in every case, have to make an alignment anyways, but this will make it easier to get to the place where you make your alignment without your steering wheel going completely crazy. So that was 1 turn, 2 turns, 3 turns, 14.5. That's as many turns as you will have to get the new tie rod end in, but we will get this nut off first because we have a new one. A lot of rust cleaner or brake cleaner will help you to ease those nuts. Done that overnight, so that is not necessary but recommended. Now, getting this nut off will not be too easy because your tie rod will turn with it. In this case, what we can do, we have a little space here on the tie rod where we can hold on to with a tool like this. That's too big. Guess that's a 13. Yep. Okay, once you're this far, you can use your wrench to get it off. Now you see what I did is put the 13 tool here onto the tie rod and stuck it into where our wishbone goes, because the part of the chassis here is holding against my force that I have to apply to this nut in order for it to come off. And as you can see, that's how rusty it gets down here. You can clearly see where the nut went, and the spot where it wasn't has been painted black, and there is a lot of rust in between those two spots. So we are going to clean that a little bit, and then our new nut is going to go on that spot. And remember, 14.5 turns for our new tie rod end, so that we know, so that we know exactly where the nut has to go. Should be fine like that. 14.5 turns. So we began around here. So that's a half. That's 1, 2. and then we turn our nut against it. Okay, this is tightened by this 16mm nut that goes just above that, and we can hold against it with a T30. Okay, that's about tight enough. When you make an alignment, they will have to open that anyways. Okay, that's for the tie rod end. Now we will move over to the more easy part, which is going to be our stronger coupling rod. All right, our first joint of the coupling rod will go up here into that hole at the damper. Oh, just drop the nut, great. Okay, just like that, but don't tighten it yet because you need to get into the hole of your stabilizer first. Down here, we'll need to do the same thing. Now we might use our car jack in order to get it in, because as you can see, can't do it now, so we will lift the wishbone a little bit so we can put it in nicely. There you go. Now with these new coupling rods, it's a bit different than with the others. There's no 5mm hex going in there. There's just a 16mm end behind the nut and a 60mm nut. So what we will do is get our wrench and our 16 tool right there. Just hold against it from behind, like this. Okay, that's tight, but before we leave it like that, we will put the car jack away so that there's no false position. And now we will give them another go, because that's the position they are in without the jack. Okay. Okay. I guess we're done here. Thank you all guys for tuning in. That's not really the hardest repair on a car or hardest exchange on the car suspension. Getting the coupling rods out is really easy, and you might run into some issues getting the tie rod ends off, but I think you'll manage. Just make sure if you exchange those two, especially with the tie rod end, that you will do an alignment afterwards, or let somebody do an alignment with your car, because your steering wheel is probably not going to be as straight as before. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. If you have any suggestions, leave them in the comments down below. Helps me, helps the people that watch this video. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and give this video a like. Will be really awesome. And yeah, guess I'm gonna see you on the next video on the Mito.